California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health, and graciously sponsored by Decade Software Company. We can't thank them enough for their generous contribution of the webinar GoToMeeting and for providing technical support while we're conducting the data summit, and for webcams when we need them. So let's go on and go to the next slide, please, and we'll go over today's agenda. Just to introduce myself, I'm Leslie Linbo, Director of Environmental Health for Yolo County and the Chairperson of the CCDEH Information Technology and Data Management Committee. Today we have two very special presentations. First, we welcome Ariu, Levi, Director of Environmental Health for Alameda County, and Dilan Rowe, Program Manager for Alameda County Environmental Health, and they will be presenting their use of GIS for the LAMP development for on-site wastewater treatment systems. For the second half of today's Data Summit, we have a presentation which includes Daryl Lewis, Vice President of Product Development for Accela Inc., and Daryl Booth, President of Decade Software. They'll be discussing opportunities to integrate data flows between different systems. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer period moderated by Jill Chaw from Decade Software, and I'll provide information on continuing education units at the end of the presentation. So let's go on to the next slide. We have some ground rules we have to go over, especially for those people that are seeking continuing education units. When you registered, you should have seen a window like this. If you want continuing education units, you should have registered and put in your name. Let's see, and then you should have received an email to join today. So let's go on and go to the next slide, please. And then when you would have signed on today, you would have seen a window like this with your name included on this window. So as this slide says, you'll be prompted to enter your access code and then enter your audio PIN. So that's important, especially if you want to ask questions. Let's move on to the next slide. And here's that window again with your name next to the little icon there. We'll go on to the next slide. Behind the scenes, we thank Errol for being present. Errol is available to take your call. Please take a moment to write down this number, 800-233-9847, extension 749, just in case you need it later in the presentation. You'll have it with you, and Errol is there to help you at any time. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and introduce our speakers then. Ariu and Dilan, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ariu Levi, and to my right is Dilan Rowe, and Dilan is our supervisor over the land use septic program. We have Muhammad Khan and Hana Alparazi, who are also part of that same program. And we're here to talk to you about an idea that's developing. You know, it hasn't yet fully taken form. It's still in that sort of time when we're figuring out what's going to be the best way to go forward. And like all good ideas, this one started with a problem. And so for us, the problem was that, well, you know, like all of us, we had the result of AB 885, which created the OWTS requirement and the new LAMP requirements. For Alameda County, we passed a new septic ordinance about 7 years ago, which really changed the landscape for septic systems in Alameda County and what could be approved, and actually introduced quite a few more complex cases that were taking much more time than we anticipated. And the third, and probably the final straw, was that we lost our 2 senior inspectors inside the land use program. And so we are now essentially starting with a brand new team. And because of that, we realized, all right, well, we did it the old way, and the old way worked under the old system, but it really doesn't work that well under what is going to be required of what we think is going to be required of us into the future. And so we've developed an approach that is relies much more on data, relies much more on the responsible party taking responsibility and the consultants taking on liability for their work, and also a much stronger collaboration between ourselves and our partners, first within the county, and if the idea works, that we hope it is scalable and we'll be able to expand out and to the cities. So what we see as our current challenges is to develop, like all of you, our local area management plan, the LAMP, and one that complies with the OWTS requirements. One of the things that kind of threw us for a loop with that is the new requirement for wineries. In Alameda County, we are a growing wine destination area, and so we have quite a few projects that are winery oriented, and they are now sort of kind of stuck in a middle ground as the regional board figures out what they need to do with them, and us, we figure out what we need to do with them. And part of what we're going to talk about is, a solution to that. We realized over time that our coordination, even in county with CDA and planning, wasn't that good. We've actually had the situation, probably none of you have, but we had it where we had a client submit sets of plans to us that were different from the set of plans that were submitted to planning and to building. And so we were all working off a different set of what we thought were the plans. And because of that, a number of problems came up for the responsible party, and that created a lot of headache for that person and unnecessary expenses. And because of that, we realized there is a better way that can result in a much better client experience. And that's what we're hoping to, in the end, achieve. One that has greater efficiency, use of our staff time, more transparency so that the client can see what's actually going on, and predictability. And as you know, in construction projects, predictability is very important. They need to know what's going to go on so they can plan for it. And the last part, and one that Dilan will go into greater detail, is the tool that we're hoping will allow us to work more closely with our regional board, the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board, on groundwater and groundwater issues. And as you know, that now has become very center stage. There are two bills, AB 1739 and SB 1168, that have just come out. Well, they've been talked about for quite a while now, but it does go to the whole issue of starting to be much better stewards of groundwater. And the whole issue of nitrate impact is one of the concerns with groundwater. So getting to what we're calling the right path means that we pretty much had to chuck out the bathwater and start afresh. And so we're going to, in a way, look at the local oversight program and their model of doing things, where they develop site conceptual models and they try to get as much work done up front to get a sense of what's going on, to engage the responsible party, the property owner, so that person's not really like off in the corner, not knowing what's going on, paying bills until they figure out, I'm paying too many bills, what the heck's going on, and then they get pissed off because things are not going the way they thought. So we want them engaged because it is, in the end, their responsibility. We're looking to incorporate feasibility studies where the consultant now has to look at all the options available and then present them to us in pre-meetings so that all of us around the table, our department, the responsible party, their consultants, can come to an understanding of what's happening at that particular site and then try to reach agreement on what might be the best path to go forward. We're also looking to create a certification program. We think it's a fairly novel idea, and that would, actually starting from ground up to create something where we can train folks to take on part of the in-the-field evaluation of sites so that we as a regulatory agency will not have to spend that kind of time. Our time is fairly expensive, and so our time is better spent actually looking at the plans and doing that aspect of it. And then using technology tools like we're going to talk about, the GIS mapping and pictometry, to get a better picture of what's happening. And then some other tools that we're going to go into next. So why don't you take this?
Okay. So as part of our turning our program upside down. We're trying to create a database to tell the picture of what we've got going on in Alameda County. Right now, our files in our database consist of EnvisionConnect, which is sparsely populated with actual data of system details, and then paper files. And so what we have started to do and are moving really quickly, thanks to Hannah, is we're starting to create an ArcGIS database. Hannah has been doing extensive outreach to publicly owned treatment plants, both water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants. We've been working with the assessor parcel, or the assessor's office. We've been working with Zone 7, which is our groundwater basin manager, and just about every database that we can think of that is relative to data that we want with respect to permitting an OWTS system. We're working with our CUPA program to get data on facilities that have animals and need manure management. And we plan on, well, actually we're also working with our our operations group to get information on wineries and other commercial facilities that we have pretty limited data on right now, but we know that they are on septic systems. So at the end of the day, this is going to be a system that you can either go to an area or go to a dot and see the density, and then specifically drill down and get more information on that site, including soil maps and earthquake faults and hydrogeology, topography, sewer locations. The picture on the right is an example of one area that is area of concern for us. It's called Killcare Road in Sunol. It's a really densely populated basically street with some tributaries coming off of it that has a major surface water body going through it. These are postage-sized lots, one on top of each other, really steep topography, and we have information on about, I think, 50% of the septic systems that are on that street. We know that there's quite a few more, at least 50% of the houses out there that we don't have any information on. So this whole idea of developing this database is one, to tell us what is in our inventory, and so that we can start to go out and figure out what we need to know about these areas of concern to us, and also then to create a database that can be used across boundaries with other regulatory agencies. So, let's go to the next slide because that has some more information. So some of the stuff that we're going to use this data for is, as Ariu talked about, is to help us as we develop our LAMP. We've had a lot of discussions with the San Francisco Regional Board over the last year. They've been very interested in our program and in land use with septic systems for the last year because of the wineries in South Livermore. And we are a county that has impacted groundwater with nitrates. And this slide on the left shows two areas of hotspots where nitrate is above the MCL, and the area that's called Greenville, Buena Vista, is the area where we're seeing the biggest winery development. So part of what we're doing here is our LAMP, our vision of the LAMP, and we seem to have good agreement with the state on this vision, is that our LAMP is going to be a living document. We'd like to get it approved as quickly as possible, and it's not a final document, but it is a document that basically outlines the elements of what we're going to do for our local agency management plan and how we're going to develop them. This ArcGIS system database is one piece of that. Because that's going to help us identify areas of concern, either impacted or at-risk groundwater basins, surface water bodies, areas with high septic system densities, areas with animal facilities. We have a lot of horse boarding and ranches that have some issues with manure management. And that's going to help us transition from our prescriptive code, which is a good code, based more on a water resource management goal-oriented code. So identifying areas of concerns is going to allow us to be able to work with the regional board and say these are the types of areas that need advanced treatment, or these are the areas that can have standard systems. And then what's really important, especially in South Livermore, is to start to develop short, medium, and long-term solutions in these areas of concern. South Livermore is booming with wineries, and the development of those wineries is in kind of a screeching halt at the moment, as the state has decided that all wineries will go through them. And so what that means as far as subsurface discharge, they're not too excited about that in an area that's already impacted with nitrates. So, you know, what are the solutions here? Are they community systems? Are they expansion of existing POWs? Is it planning of new POWs? Creation of local management entities? This kind of database is going to allow us to understand and get support from politicians, community stakeholders, everybody that's involved in really development of these areas. And then many others. There's a lot of benefits to this. Some of the others are informed real estate transactions. I know that everybody in every county has a lot of real estate agents and people wanting to know about systems for houses that are being sold, and this will help inform that part of the world. And lastly is to aid in community education and outreach programs. You know, as we move forward, if a resident or a commercial business is in an area of concern and they have a aging septic system, we're going to have to start figuring out how we're going to bring them into compliance, and having pictures and showing visuals is a good way to bring people on board.
So a primary success is developing trust. And we think we've laid the groundwork for that with the regional board to see this as a different approach to dealing with septic and cumulative impact by nitrates. And that's why we're calling this a living document, because it's going to be one where it hopefully will continue to evolve as we gather more data, we add more transparencies, and then the trust comes in because we share this with the regional board. And with that, they have the capacity to feel comfortable enough that the waters of the state are being protected, and the local agency can go forward and be the ones who actually work with the clientele. So now we talked about ArcGIS, and so the ArcGIS is a data platform that's available on the internet, like online in the cloud. But the county has something called the Enterprise GIS, and it's essentially the same thing. It's an ESRI product, which gives us the XYZ capacity, very important for being able to log in groundwater sample results and depth. But it's within the county firewall, and so it's a protected system. And so, can you click on that top one? So this is a picture of the actual. Maybe a picture of the actual E-GIS. Yeah, there it is. So that's what our E-GIS looks like. And what we're hoping is, okay, so you have this map, which gives you a nice, pictorial framework to kind of work off of and get a sense of where everything is compared to everything else. And then, if you can close that, and let's look at the next one down. Yeah. So cancel that. Sure. Okay, the food facilities. So what we're hoping is that we're going to be able to model it after our food program in terms of how they use GIS. And so, like many of the other counties, many of you, we've mapped all of our sites onto the county map and dots on the map and all of our inspectional results and such. And so then you can bring it up and you can look at specific sites. So let's look at Castro Valley as an example. So the filter by city, and then 7-Eleven. And so what that does is it drills right down and puts that dot on the map geocoded fairly accurately We have a couple of Trimble units, which are surveyor accurate, down to the meter. So if we find our geocode is not that accurate, we can go back out and take a field reading and make it very accurate. But then the intent is to be able to, with us and EnvisionConnect, to have data relevant to the land use site appear like you see now for that food site. So you see all the food stuff that's out of EnvisionConnect. And we want to do something similar with the land use sites. Okay, so another part of this is we have the E-GIS, and that's to give a map and to have a place where you have this pictorial framework where everything is, but then you have to have a place where you store all your actual data. And so what we're looking at is FileNet. And FileNet is a tool that multiple agencies can use, they can share. And so here we have an example of a pictometry picture that one of our retired inspectors took, and then he drew on it. And so now you have that map kind of looking thing, which shows you where that dot on the map is, but then you have a picture that shows you exactly where the buildings are and all that other kind of stuff, and you can draw on it and you can save that in FileNet. And what we're really looking at is getting out of all the paper that's related to plans by also being able to bring in the CAD drawings from the actual blueprints for these facilities, and then have one set of plans that Public Works, that planning, we call planning CDA, and environmental health will look at, so we're not in this quandary of, the developer gave us each a different set of plans. So we have one set of plans. We can all draw lines onto that set of plans in terms of our red line edits, and everyone else then will be able to see that. And at the same time, within FileNet, each of the involved agencies will have the ability to have a folder where they can keep all the other related stuff like their permits or their sign-offs or just a running log of their notes related to the site. And it gives every one of us the capacity to look at that, and then all of us stay up to date with what's going on. All of that then tied to that map by way of a dot on the E-GIS. So transparency and client service is really important to us. And so one thing, we found with land use is that there's a lot of unknowing by the contractors and such. When can I bring out my, yellow metal, my bulldozers and stuff and do this? And so everything is somewhat contingent on us giving approval or Public Works giving approval and all that. And it creates, for a number of projects, more stress than is needed. So what we're hoping, and we haven't really gotten to this point yet, but what we're hoping is that we're going to be able to share this data with the responsible party just for their dot on the map, so that they can see themselves, what is the actual progress, because they can see our notes, and they can see when the notes were entered, and so they'll know whether or not their project has been sidelined, nothing's happened to it, or, no, someone did something with this yesterday. So scalability. Actually, this idea came to us, and it just kind of sat on our back burner for a while, this whole idea of how do we reduce how many plans we get, because every plan is like a tree. You cut down a tree to make these plans. And so we've looked at different forms of the electronic plan check room, which I know many other of you have already started into. And so with that, and again, staying with the land use program, but if it could be expanded to the food program or the recreation program, all of that then should be loadable onto our field laptops. And then when the inspector goes out into the field, rather than carry that full set of plans, they would have a projector. If you could click on that little projector thing. And so as an example, something like this. And this has high resolution, high lumen, and it's like $400. And so that's something they can fit inside their bag along with their laptop, and they can shoot the plans up onto the wall wherever they are, and everyone can look at it. And if they edit it, then that edit will be seen by the other people. And also, in terms of meeting with Public Works and CDA, we don't have to leave our office. We can all be looking at the plans from our own offices, save that travel time, and then reach agreements without having to, waste all that travel time. And that's our idea.
Well, good morning all, and Ariu, I want to thank you for that excellent presentation. Dylan, you as well. What Alameda County might not have pointed out, but is really important, is that 10 or more years ago, their interest and focus in GIS and integrating multiple systems within the county resulted in our very first versions of GIS interface. And so that then has been built and grown through EnvisionConnect as we proceed forward. So it took Alameda County and their leadership, and I see that they continue to lead. Jill, if you'll allow me to share my desktop, I'm looking for that link. There we go. And so for the second part of our presentation, we want to build upon this idea of sharing data in a right-minded approach between systems in order to facilitate transactions. So we heard Ariu and Dylan talk about ArcGIS, FileNet, the permitting process, the assessor's office, the regional board, and so forth, and these are all parties that are vested in those transactions. It was just earlier this summer that one of the directors of California Health Department took it upon himself to issue a survey. And the focus of his survey was land use. And as you see here on the screen, these are the counties that responded. Good representative sample. And the focus of his survey was to determine who's using what and to what extent are we talking between environmental health and building and planning. That was really a primary focus. And so I cherry-picked a few questions here, I think, that underscore the value of our next presenter and what he has to show us. In particular, he's looking at how the organization is established, and so many of the EH land use programs are part of public health, the majority in fact. And in that case, do we have common software programs? Most do not. And then he took a look at what software programs are out there that happen to be in use, and Accela is one of the big players in this space. A lot of the counties that have environmental health that might be using decade software are also the counties where building and planning and other departments perhaps are using Accela. Now, when it comes to data sharing, he determined through this survey that there really isn't much data sharing going on. In fact, there's no data sharing, or they're doing double data entry. These were the two prevalent responses. And to a data manager like myself and to Daryl Lewis, who I'll introduce in a sec, we just hate that kind of stuff. We hate the idea that we're doing double data entry. Anybody can see that that's inefficient. So under the umbrella of the CCDEH IT committee, we reached out to our friends at Accela, and in particular Daryl Lewis, who's the vice president of product management for many years, and we asked him, what extent is there a possibility to integrate between what goes on in building and planning and what goes on in environmental health, to the extent that there are common elements to these permitted projects. And right away, Daryl knew what I was talking about, and right away he understood that we had a lot of common customers, and right away he had some ideas and a line of features that he thought could be applicable to this discussion. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Daryl. Daryl, if you're on the line, go ahead and power up that webcam, and we'll ask Jill to set you up to share your desktop, and we'd like you to introduce us to the methods by which these transactions can be shared.
Great. Thank you so much, Daryl. I really appreciate the opportunity. And as Daryl said, yes, we, when we first talked about this, there was no question that we, we fully understood the challenges there. So let's see. The only issue, hold on just one second. Okay, so yeah, I think we really understood the issues that in today's marketplace, in today's ecosystem of software. It is not likely that one software system is going to serve the entire end-to-end process. And I think for those of you that may be Accela customers, you are probably using multiple systems in addition to that to do either your direct work or to interface with other departments and divisions that may be doing adjunct work in association with what you're doing. So yes, I welcome the opportunity to talk a little bit about integration, some of the things that we're doing at Accela, and things that we just see in the industry in general. I think it's a great time in the software industry for being able to handle complex integrations and really do some of the things that Daryl just mentioned, such as eliminating duplicate data entry and all the problems that go with that. So as I said, I think the reality today is that integrations between key applications that support a variety of business needs are a must. What we used to see, and certainly what I have been involved with over the years at Accela, is that quite often these connectors or integrations between products was an expensive, time-consuming process of mapping two systems together. In addition to being expensive, it really wasn't scalable, and if anything changed between the applications, those integrations could be impacted by that. And so what we've certainly seen in the last few years is much more efficient APIs, a lot of exciting ways that we really can support these necessary integrations with third-party products. So Accela customers will probably recognize this. I'm just going to put it in context for you here. Accela has something called the Civic Platform, and the Civic Platform is made up of our automation product, which handles a variety of things from land management, and more. And a lot of pieces in the process. So I know there was some discussion about GIS this morning. Things like that are all integral to the product. Workflow, electronic document review, all those things are there. But I think what's really come to bear for us all is this layer that we call Accela Construct. And in that, we have the APIs and the associated SDKs, software development kits, that actually make these integrations much more intuitive, much more manageable by agencies, large and small, and we're certainly seeing that happen very quickly. And even the ability to publish out some of the information for more transparency through open data. So our Accela Construct, we currently have, and this slide is slightly old because just after I had done this, I heard that we're approaching probably about 400 now REST APIs. So those are application programming interfaces, and I'm not going to get any more technical than that. And they facilitate the integration at all levels within the Accela Civic platform. These REST APIs support what we call intelligent interaction between the specific program components or applications that you're trying to integrate. And by intelligent interaction, I'm talking about really being able to anticipate when the systems need to talk to one another, what data may need to be passed, and what the outcome is, what really needs to happen between the adjunct system and the core system in order for the interaction, or excuse me, the integration to be successful. And generally, these REST APIs support two methods of integration. It's a push or a get. So am I pushing information to the integrated system, or is that integrated system going to get or call for information within the core system? Oops, that looks like the same slide. So most of the integrations that we have seen happen off of the workflow. So the Accela automation and many of the systems that you probably use have some degree of workflow, and that workflow is typically a somewhat linear process going from task 1 to task 2 and so on. What we're really saying here is that with the Civic platform and with the APIs available, you really can begin looking at how these third-party adjunct solutions can be linked into the system. And the workflow, as I said, is really one of the key places where that can happen. In automation, and I think in many other systems as well, the workflow is made up of tasks and statuses. So those, when a particular task with a particular status is achieved, or it has been updated in the system, we can actually trigger the APIs to begin the integration task. And so that might be, some review is required in a third-party system. We need to link out to do a certain type of inspection or something like that's being handled separately, or even a particular department. So, if we were talking about groundwater this morning, and so as a part of a permitting process, you may need to go to a whole separate system that would do the tests and validate that the building is actually going to be constructed in an area, where the groundwater is acceptable. And I won't go any further than that because I'm no groundwater expert. So then we can trigger the other system if we need to create a new record or a new item within that system to start the process. We can do that. And we can pass the key data that's really required to be able to make that a seamless process. So in effect, eliminating the need to double enter data and being able to easily keep those systems in sync throughout the process. And then ultimately we have to determine what the outcome is from that particular integrated solution. And in the example I was just saying, whatever process has happened in that integrated solution, we want to come back to the workflow and say, yes, this process, this adjunct process was successful in this third-party system. We want to update the workflow, which would allow the overall process, in this case possibly a permit, to continue to completion. So that's the basic process. There are many, many other ways to integrate, but we found that workflow seems to be the overarching process that really helps support these integrations. I've got a couple of examples of things that we've done recently. I know they may not be specifically applicable to what you're doing in the health department area, but I think you'll see the parallels to what we're talking about here. So Accela has been working with a couple of partners, IT Pipes and Waste Tracking, recently to be able to do some integrations that are both prototypical in a way, but also companies that our customers have expressed interest in and wanted to understand better how those could integrate. So for example, with IT Pipes, this is more around the storm and wastewater inspection area. In this case, they need to be able to use a closed caption television capability to be able to inspect the pipes. Now, that, in this case, this is probably more used in our asset management area rather than permitting, but you can see the need. We support these, and let me switch to the next slide here. So we support condition assessments and the inspections that go along with those reports, things like that. There's a GIS component here as well. But the Accela system, the Civic platform, is not going to be facilitating this particular work. We need to go out and be able to address the separate system that does that. And so it gives then our users direct feedback on this and instant access to these completed inspections, and that allows the process to continue forward. Otherwise, it would have been an adjunct process that had to be handled separately, and then somebody would either have to go back into automation and update the workflow or send some emails or that sort of thing. And there would have been obvious data duplication here for sure. For the integration with waste tracking, I think this one has taught us a lot of valuable lessons about integration. waste tracking basically handles the recycling programs that are required in construction, really tracking what materials go on site and then what's used, what's disposed of, and how it's disposed of. And so the contractor or the demolition crew or whomever, they must complete these waste tracking plans, and that becomes an integral part of the permitting process. And what we were really seeing was there was a lot of data duplication. There was a lot of, I've done my building permit, now I've got to go over into the waste tracking system, and I have to go and create my waste tracking plan, and I can't bring any of that valuable information over. There's also no tie between the permitting activity and the tracking plan. So we have no way of knowing if the tracking plan is staying on track. We have no way of knowing when it's complete, and obviously to sign off on the final construction, or sign off on the permit first, and then at the end to get the certificate of occupancy for the building, they need to have done this successfully. And so again, this is kind of that idea, and it's maybe a little small for some people to see, but this is that workflow process, and this really details the interaction points between the core system, automation, and the waste tracking system. So what happens is, based on business rules, we determine if the waste management plan is required, and that has to do, I think, in most cases with the value of the project and the type of the project. And so when the workflow is updated to indicate that this is required, then we create a new record or the start of this waste management plan within waste tracking, and we correlate them, right? We have the permit number or the application number for what's happening back in automation. We link those together, and we pass a lot of key information. So we know the owner, we know the location, we know the type of construction, and that means something in the waste tracking system as well. They manage their waste tracking plan totally separately. They make updates to that plan, but really what the customer wanted to know was, when is the plan approved, because that allows the permit to be issued, and then at the end, has the waste tracking plan been managed according to the approved plan? And if it hasn't, obviously there's some work to be done before they could final the construction for that permit. So I think, although not terribly applicable to what you do, I think you can start to see how this could happen. And this is a singular example, but the reality is that, our larger customers are interfacing with multiple products, and certainly the system supports that type of integration. There can be many things happening in parallel, or sometimes the process just needs to stop while this third-party product process is managed, and then we can come back and continue the process. So I think the key things that that I would say you should consider as you're looking at the integration approaches to these various products that you need to work adjunctly with are, what are the key touch points between the system and where do these occur? As I mentioned, that's, in our system that tends to be workflow but doesn't absolutely need to be. When we were working with the waste management planning, they had ideas that a lot of things could happen automatically, but business rules didn't always allow those things to happen. So I think it's great to envision how these things will work, but simplicity is important as well. It needs to be a repeatable process, so when the particular task and status is achieved and this process is kicked off, that we have a repeatable way to pass the data and reliably get the process started in the new system. Or if we're simply, if these are two systems running in parallel and we're simply passing out some statuses or information exchange between the systems, being sure that we know that that's a repeatable business process. Then we have to decide what data may need to be passed between the systems. The REST APIs allow us to be able to programmatically map that data so that we know where the data is coming from and where we want to push that data to in the system, and on the back end, what we want to update. And so we can update workflows, we can populate fields of data, we can draw from fields of data, we can address GIS systems and things like that to be able to provide mapping information. We can even go into GIS and get information that may be pertinent to what's happening in that third-party system. So there's just a variety of ways to do that. We just ultimately need to know, what that data and what those requirements are. Is the integration a push or a get operation? So by that I mean, in the example I was giving you with the waste management planning, that is basically a push. So we push a new waste management plans kickoff into that system, and with that the data that's necessary. And at the end of that process, we push back the required statuses that we need to get from the system. We could have also let the third-party system be the driving force, and then it would be a get operation. So when somebody came to start their waste management plan, for example, they could have addressed automation to get the data that's necessary. And so you really have to decide which system is the dominant system, the core system, and which one is operating adjunctly with that. And then I think finally the other important point is, is this process for the system to be integrated being handled in parallel with the core system, or is, as I mentioned before, is this something where everything stops, say, in the permit process until we can get a successful response back from that integrated system? Most what we see is in parallel, but there are obviously start and stop points where not getting a successful response back from the integrated system would impede the ability for, say, the permit process to continue. So I think those are really the key processes that need to happen. There are so many ways to look at this. I think the great news today is that REST APIs are quite prevalent in the industry. We certainly are continuing to develop those and to enrich the Civic platform. But in general, they are available to you in the industry, I think, with most modern products. So my sense is that there is no need to feel that you're isolated between systems, and I think it's a fairly direct process. I think most of it is around just what you need to do and being clear on the business rules that drive that, and the rest of it is simply just getting someone to build that. We use a fairly hefty set of SDKs here that we find customers or consultants go in and fairly easily manage these integrations. But of course we handle a lot of those for our customers as well. Daryl? Daryl, can you hear me?
I can now. Thank you, Daryl.
Okay.
I can see by the panel here that we're reorganizing ourselves for a quick Q&A. We have just 10 minutes, and so I'll ask Jill to unmute the lines and go ahead and give some instructions on how to raise our hands and so forth in order to ask these questions.
Is Jill there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Oh,
Jill.
sorry
Go ahead.
about that. It was unmuted. So we have about 5 minutes for questions and answer. I want to thank Ariu, Dilan, Daryl Booth, and Daryl Lewis for your presentation. To be sensitive to everyone's schedule, we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible within the allocated time frame. So if you do have a question, go ahead and please raise your hand. It should be on your right-hand panel on the top left. We had a question come in while Daryl Lewis, you were giving your presentation. It asks, is the Civic platform a separate software package that would have to be included into Accela? If so, how much would it cost?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? It's a little hard to hear.
Richard asks, is the Civic platform a separate software package that would have to be included into Accela? If so, how much?
No, the Civic platform is really the overarching platform for automation. That's included in the automation product suite, so there's no extra charge for that. All APIs are included as a part of the licensing of the product.
Okay.
I have a question, Jill. This is Leslie. For Ariu's team, I'll turn my cam on. For Ariu's team, I'm wondering, what are your IT resources? Do you have, how many dedicated IT staff do you have to do those amazing things that you did? It was really impressive.
Right now, we are actually half-staffed in our IT unit, and so we have 3 people, but we had 3 vacancies that we're working on filling. So once they're back to being fully staffed, they will be 6 in total.
And we have one woman who is Hannah, sitting at the end of our screen there, who is doing the data collection and the data population of the new database for land use. And so one person doing a lot of work.
There's also ICD, right, that created the E-GIS application. So,
right. I don't know if you heard, Hannah, but there's also county-wide ITD. And so we've contracted with them to develop the E-GIS in the way we need it in terms of the transparencies. We're hoping that we're going to be able to develop in concert with CDEH Public Works.
Thank you. We have another question from Richard. Go ahead. Richard, can you hear? Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so to expand on my original one, we've been asking this question of our IT people for quite a while. I don't know if they actually were talking decade in Accela, because we saw that as an issue. We've been having a double entry for quite a while. So and the thing is, when was the Civic platform in place? So if somebody agency had it before it was developed, is the updates automatically included in it?
Yeah, it would require you to be on version 7.3 of automation. So if you're not up to date, you might have an upgrade to do, but that's all that would be required to be able to use the REST APIs in the Civic platform.
So then, environmental health, working with our building department, who has the Accela and who is our lead in land use, which we do a lot of approvals through their Accela system. But when we're trying to capture data, we have to do it separately so we can know what we're doing. So would our 2 IT agencies have to talk to each other and arrange how they connect up?
This is Daryl. I'll speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
If you don't mind, I don't want to interject too abruptly, but we are aware of the issue that prompted today's section, the second session in particular. And the direction that I have been given and that I've been sharing with the Decade customers is that if the promise of what was shown today resonates with you, then you should take that information to your director and have your director take it to the Envision Steering Committee. The Envision Steering Committee meets next in September at the CCDEH annual conference, And it would be just perfectly appropriate if the directors met with me in that session and said, Daryl, we saw what the CCDEH IT committee brought. We are aware of what Accela can do through the API and SDK that they've opened up. Daryl, we need you as a representative of Decade Software to go make this happen. And then that would be the prompt to pursue it. We do it that way because if there is integration to occur, and it sounds like there is opportunity, that's for sure, then we would together want to approach it in a way that was universally applied to all the places where we have a common customer, Accela and Decade. We wouldn't want to do it as a one-off. We wouldn't want to get too far out one agency ahead of another and potentially end up with something that would be difficult to maintain because the goals and the approach would be different. And so in sum, Richard, I would just ask you if this seems like it has promise, yes, check with your IT department, make sure they're open to it, but really please take it to your EH director.
Okay, thank you.
And I would echo that's, you know, as I was showing the IT pipes and the waste management, that's exactly what we did, was to try to look at those holistically, right, so that it's much easier to approach it, you know, with a singular approach to a product integration, and much easier to maintain on the back end as well.
Great.
I just want to echo what Daryl said. For those directors on the line, for getting anything on the Envision Steering Committee agenda for September, please let me know or Daryl know, and we can put that on the agenda and prepare for that discussion.
Thank you, everybody. That's the time we have for questions and answer. Go ahead, Leslie. Go ahead, close our CCDEH Data Summit.
All right, thank you. I want to thank all of our speakers today. This is a really valuable discussion. I really appreciate your time today. For those people that are seeking continuing education units, please go to ccdeh.com. There is a fee of $25, and we're going to test your knowledge of what you learned today. So pretty soon, give us a few days, and we'll put some multiple choice questions on the website, and if you could take that quiz, and even if you're not seeking continuing education units, your feedback is really valuable to us. There's some questions on the CCDEH website just to give us your feedback on the Data Summit and how we can make this a valuable experience for you. And thanks again. Our sponsor for the Data Summit, Decade Software, really can't thank you enough. We hope that we will see you next week. Please join us when LA County will be presenting the online portal for cottage food operations. So this is a great tool for streamlining what we do and allowing customers to be able to put their information in the system themselves, and rather than our staff filling out applications and putting into our system and duplicating work, which is what we're trying to eliminate. So thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Have a great day.
Everyone.